And
to attack journalists who are trying to do their jobs.
In 15 or 20 years, you're not trying to do your job. You're not a journalist, Brian. You're an activist. That's the problem. You have an agenda, and your agenda is anti-Trump. The American people see through that, and they are very grateful that this president is finally holding the fake news media accountable, because you're activists. You're not reporting fact and truth. You won't even say that as a general
the reason why I think it's helpful to have these conversations
shouldn't ever appear in a media outlet.
Jenna, fantastic. So tell us what that was all about, and also tell us a little bit about yourself at the White House.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I have the great privilege of working as a senior legal advisor for the re-election campaign, and then also as private counsel to President Donald Trump. So that means that I get to see him in person often, interact with him. And, I just have to tell you what he's talking about right now, and his demeanor, his excitement, his enthusiasm in front of a crowd of thousands of his closest friends. That's exactly how he is one-on-one. And, that's what the fake news media doesn't want to show. That's what they don't want to report, is that Americans, by and large, understand our values and our freedoms and our liberty, and they love America. They love our opportunity and the fact that we are built as a society on that great promise in the Declaration of Independence that was unanimously signed by our founders, that says that our rights come from God, our creator, not our government. And so the full and purpose of government is to preserve and protect those rights for all. That's genuine equality. And so what activists like Brian Stelter of CNN, what they're trying to do is to simply bring on guests like myself, not to actually talk about issues. We were supposed to talk about a fake CNN poll that was remarkably off base. It was very manipulated in terms of industry standards. It only polled adults, not likely or registered voters, and it also underrepresented Republicans compared to Democrats and independents in that poll. But of course, we never even got to that, because all that Stelter wanted to do was talk over me, humiliate me, and create a soundbite. And that's what activist media does. Instead of just reporting the facts and allowing America to think for ourselves and to actually decide for ourselves, they want to manipulate us into believing their lies and their narrative. And so when we call them activists instead of journalists, that's really what it's all about. And that's why President Trump is so right to call it fake news, because it's not the news, it's propaganda and it's activism.
Rita.
Now, no president has faced the sort of venom that Donald Trump has faced from the media. Just the overwhelming majority of the coverage, whatever the issue is relentlessly negative. But I do want to ask you about criticism of these rallies starting again. We just saw some footage, big crowd, no social distancing. What's your response to criticism that that's irresponsible at a time where we are in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, the criticism is coming from those activists, and those were the same activists that were championing and thinking it was so wonderful and amazing that Black Lives Matter rioters, not just protesters, let's not call them that, they were looters, arsonists, people who were against everything that this nation stands for, and they were championing that and saying, isn't this great? Just over the last few weeks and months. And so that is so hypocritical then to say that somehow it's irresponsible for the campaign to hold a rally in a state that has opened up. The governor and the mayor of Tulsa were very much in support of this rally, and we've taken proper protocols by instituting temperature checks, handing out masks voluntarily. That's according to the state governor there and the rules of the local city there, as well as hand sanitizer, and making sure that everyone there is doing this peacefully and assembling according to local safety protocols. And so, there was never even a discussion about being irresponsible when it came to supporting the woke rioters. But somehow when we all want to assemble for the United States president, when we've taken proper safety protocols, then somehow that's irresponsible. All this is showing is the Democrats' blatant hypocrisy for speech that they don't want to prefer and that they don't agree with.
James.
Jenna, I want to ask you about what's going on in Seattle and a lot of these Democrat-run cities across the country, which seem to be basically telling their cops not to do anything about people defacing property, destroying statues. And in Seattle, they've taken over a 6 or 7 block area of the city, and somebody was shot overnight there, and they didn't even let the cops come in. I'm hearing that a lot of people are concerned that the president isn't taking enough of a firm hand about doing something to enforce the law and see that the law is enforced in these jurisdictions. Are you concerned at all about what's happening in Seattle and these other cities where left-wing mayors have pretty much given things over to Antifa, whether it is to take over actual territory or just to allow them to go on rampages and riots and tear down statues while the police just stand there idly by?
I'm very concerned, and I can tell you the president is also very, very concerned, and he has said through his Twitter feed at the roundtable discussions that if this isn't under control, that he will step in. And, generally speaking, mayors and governors typically work with presidents because they understand that their obligation is to protect and support their communities. This shouldn't be a political partisan issue, but it has become that for the Democrats. And so what they're doing is that they're rebuffing the president's offer for help and support, and they're pretending that these are, block parties. Mayor Jenny there in Seattle is pretending that this is just okay, that they've declared you're leaving the United States of America to enter what they initially called the CHAZ, the autonomous zone that's now been renamed to the CHOP. This is something that's completely breaking down Western civilization. It's breaking down the rule of law and the enforcement of law. And that's what you're seeing with these radical leftist Democrats, is that they don't want law and order. All they want is to allow anarchists to succeed so that we are transforming our great nation into a nation that we don't even recognize anymore. And this is the tipping point and why it's so important for President Trump in America to get 4 more years so that we can make sure that even from him all the way down ticket, that we vote for conservatives, which the root word of that means conserving something. What are we conserving? The rule of law, and making sure that that enforcement is genuinely carried out by the executive branch in each state, which includes the governor and the mayor. So they need to start working with President Trump. He's offered that help. And I think that at the right moment, when he's seen, okay, this has gone too far and they're not willing to accept, he has said he will step in. And when he does make that call, absolutely, I will support that. And so will all of Americans who are sick and tired of these riots and these anarchists.
Jenna, we had Secretary Mike Pompeo on the show exclusively a few weeks ago, and he warned about China's Belt and Road Initiative, and one of our earlier guests, Tim Smith, was talking about how the Victorian government had signed up to that. But at this point in history, we've now got Donald Trump with communists inside the country and communists outside the country threatening America. How much is, and we know Secretary Pompeo has been chatting to his Chinese counterpart in Hawaii, I think was the other day. This coming election, how critical is it for the preservation of the American dream?
It's so critical. I can't even underscore how critical this is, because you're seeing the radical leftist Democrats who openly champion communism and who have open ties to the Chinese Communist Party, like Joe Biden, who will be the Democrat nominee. And so this is a turning point for America, where we're going to have to decide if we want to keep our great American experiment and the great American dream alive through Donald Trump, or whether we are going to risk losing our country and losing the founding principles that has made this country so great. And so Secretary Pompeo, Vice President Pence, President Donald Trump has been very clear that America is not a communist country. And if people vote in Joe Biden for president, then that is going to change in this country. And that scares me as someone who loves this great country, as someone who practices and specializes in constitutional law and the understanding and idea that rights are for all, and that we have a rule of law in this country. I am willing to protect and preserve that. And I know our founders supported that by saying, we are recognizing that we're giving our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor for this. And I think that Americans, by and large, still support that, and we're going to see another 4 or more years of Donald Trump, but that really is the risk. It's not just Trump versus Biden. This is American exceptionalism, the rule of law, all of our founding principles, genuine equality, versus communism, socialism, and everything about the radical left that wants to transform America. That's what we're deciding on November 3rd.
Rita.
I want to ask you about Joe Biden. You mentioned him is going to be the nominee. He struggles to complete a coherent sentence, even in the most softball interviews that he receives from the media. How is he going to fare during the debates? He can't hide in the basement forever. How is he going to cope in the debates with Donald Trump?
Well, we'll see if he even wants to show up to a debate. And so, you're seeing that the left is pushing this whole, COVID crisis still. They are pushing back against reopening the economy. They're pushing back against typical election procedures because they want to allow the opportunity for election manipulation and fraud through mail-in voting, election integrity issues. You can go to protectthevote.com here in the U.S. To learn more about election integrity and why this is so important. But in terms of Joe Biden, he's hiding in his basement because he really isn't competent and capable enough to hold a press conference, to string together 5 words. We've seen, what the Democrats are passing off as just, these, kind of mistakes. But no, this is someone who clearly isn't mentally fit, and we're seeing that. So it's going to be very interesting if he tries to say that he won't participate in the debates. But I'm really excited and looking forward to it because that Donald Trump is not going to hold back any punches. And I think that we're going to see that remarkable disparity and see that we have one leader and we have one really, really, really weak person who just isn't up to the task.
Jenna Ellis, thanks so much for coming on Outside. It's great to have you here. I hope we can chat to you again as we get closer to the election. Thank you so much for coming on Outsiders today.
See you soon.